One, as you look ahead to 2050, we are talking about an additional 9 billion people on this planet that need to be fed. And so we are thinking about overall food supplies and how do we get those food supplies in a sustainable manner. Second, you have, despite the last Green Revolution, which was enormously successful, you have large parts of the developing world still food deficit and with low productive agriculture systems. And even in countries where the Green Revolution was successful, like India, you've got regions within the country where productivity levels have been very low, where rural poverty is high, and one needs to find a way in which we can change that situation. And then you've got the other dimension to the problem, that the Green Revolution was successful in increasing the overall pile of grain, but it's not been successful in creating the diversity in the food system that's needed for addressing problems of micronutrient malnutrition. So we have a situation now where purely in terms of calorie consumption, much of the global population has adequate amount of calories to consume, and so calorie hunger is on a declining trend. But hidden hunger from micronutrient malnutrition is stubbornly high, and we don't have a mechanism for tackling that problem. So from all these reasons, I think the next Green Revolution is really important. Smallholder integration into value chains is a burning topic that needs to be addressed across the developing world, and figuring out what are the mechanisms to do that. I mean, why should we worry about smallholders, first of all? I mean, the reason you worry about them is much of agriculture is done by smallholders today, and we need to find a way for them to grow out of poverty and low productive agriculture systems. And agriculture is the primary engine of growth for these populations to move out of poverty. Having said that, you then say, what are the options for making that happen? The high value chains is one mechanism by which you can make that happen, by linking smallholders to these value chains for vegetables, fruit, dairy products, etc. Obviously, there are very high transactions costs associated with that. It's much easier to deal with one large producer than to deal with a lot of small producers, and that's just a straight fact of life in such situations. But it's happened before, and it's happened before successfully. If you think about the Indian dairy system, the entire Indian dairy system, the milk supply system, is built on smallholder dairy. It's built on families with 1 or 2 or 3 cows that supply the milk from these few animals into a collection center, which then gets integrated into the next level of the dairy, the chilling plant and the processing plant, etc., and then moves on up the value chain into the urban milk supply system. So India has had examples of doing that, and one can think about similar examples in plantation crops, etc., where this aggregation has taken place. Now, you need a mechanism to create scale that a supermarket chain will be able to interact with. So you cannot, a supermarket system will not interact with 1,000 smallholders, but they'll want to interact with one entity or a few entities that can represent all of these different players. And there are different models for that. There's producer companies, there's farmer cooperatives, etc., that are being worked on. some more successfully than others. But that's the future. That's where much of the discussion needs to happen and the experimentation has to happen. Feminization of agriculture is a reality. If you look across the developing world today, you find much of agriculture tasks are performed by women, and women manage agricultural operations across the board. And women spend long hours in agricultural operations. There are only 24 hours in a day, right? So you spend more time in agriculture, you're giving up time that you would spend with your children, child rearing activities, or just taking care of yourself. So it's not just child care, but it's also the care of the woman herself that gets sacrificed in the high amount of work done in agriculture. And the work in agriculture tends to be very intensive. It's drudgery. It's high level of drudgery. So to the extent that you can reduce the drudgery and release that labor, you create opportunities for greater amount of time for child care activities and greater amount of time for women to take care of themselves and improve their own overall health and well-being. So that's crucial. But related to that is the extent to which women are empowered to be able to do that. And empowerment of women is a crucial part of this equation. Rural women need to be able to make decisions on how they allocate their time, how they allocate their resources, and how the returns from farming can then be used within the house for consumption purposes and investment purposes, etc. So these are all issues that are interrelated, and having a really strong program around women's empowerment would be extremely important. The women's self-help movement in India is showing some examples of how one can do that. There are similar examples in Africa, etc., where women have started to take charge of the overall development process in rural areas and are making a big difference in just success in implementing development projects.